The rooftop restaurant glittered against the Manhattan skyline, all glass, steel, and gold accents. Waiters in crisp uniforms floated between tables like shadows, balancing trays of champagne and caviar. Tonight wasn't just another dinner, it was the kind of night that could change careers, fortunes, and reputations for Amara Johnson. It was just another shift. She adjusted the black apron around her waist, exhaled deeply, and steadied her tray. Rent was overdue, her mother's hospital bills piled higher every week, and the double shift had left her ankles aching. Still, she forced a smile. Survival didn't allow luxury like rest. Table 7, Amara, her manager whispered. Big clients, don't screw it up. She nodded. Throat dry. At table 7 sat Richard Holden, billionaire CEO of Holden Industries, a man the media worshipped as a visionary. His slicked back hair gleamed under the chandeliers, his suit tailored, within an inch of perfection. Around him, investors laughed too loudly, executives leaned in too eagerly. Power clung to him like an aura. Amara approached, balancing the tray. Your Pinot Noir, sir, she said softly, placing the glass in front of him. Richard didn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the man across the table, some foreign investor whose face betrayed cautious amusement. Then Amara set down the second glass, just slightly askew, barely an inch off-center. Richard's jaw tightened. He turned, slowly, eyes cold. What's your name? Amara Froze? Amara Sur? He repeated the syllables like they were foreign. Then, in a voice sharp enough to cut glass, he sneered, You can't even set down a glass straight. Are you stupid? The words cracked through the air like a whip. The table fell silent. Forks paused mid-air. A woman at the table coughed to break the tension. But her eyes darted to Amara with pity. Amara's fingers trembled against the tray. Her lips parted, but no words came. Heat rushed to her face, anger, shame, disbelief colliding in her chest. She wanted to speak. She wanted to scream. But her manager's voice echoed in her head. Don't screw it up. So she bowed her head. I'm sorry, sir. Richard smirked, satisfied, and turned back to his guest as if nothing had happened. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, projections for next quarter. But across the table, the foreign investor Mr. Chen watched in silence, his brows furrowed, his wine untouched. The room's laughter did not return as easily as before. Amara walked away, her back straight, though her heart quaked. And in that single, humiliating moment, the spark of Richard Holden's empire's collapse had been lit. The staff break room smelled of burnt coffee and disinfectant. Amara sat slumped in a plastic chair, her apron still tied, her hands shaking as if the insult were etched into her skin. You okay? Whispered Janelle, another waitress. Amara forced a brittle laugh. Fine, just fine. Don't lie. I was right there. Janelle's jaw tightened, the way he said it, like you weren't even human. Amara's lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to cry, to scream, to walk out. But what good would it do? He's a billionaire. I'm just a waitress. The door swung open. Their manager poked his head inside. Enough talking. Get back out there. And Amarach not to draw attention again. All right, she blinked. Attention. You know what I mean. His voice lowered. We can't afford to upset clients like him. Just let it go. The words settled like chains around her chest. Let it go, always. Meanwhile, in a sleek hotel suite across the city, Richard Holden poured himself another glass of scotch. His vice president Carter shifted uneasily in his seat. That scene at dinner tonight. Richard smirked. What about it? The waitress. Maybe you could have been clear. Richard interrupted. I was clear. She made a mistake. I corrected it. That's discipline. Weakness isn't tolerated at my table. But the investor, Chen, he didn't look impressed. Richard chuckled darkly. Chen will sign the deal regardless. Money doesn't care about feelings. Carter swallowed his words, knowing better than to push. At that same hour, Mr. Chen sat alone in his penthouse suite, staring out at the Hudson River. His assistant, May, placed a report in front of him. You were quiet tonight, she said gently. He nodded. Did you see how he spoke to her? May hesitated. I did. My father was called the same thing. In London, when he tried to open his first shop, Chun's eyes hardened. I swore I'd never work with men who confuse cruelty with strength. Then why continue negotiations? May asked. Because I want to see if arrogance blinds him completely. Back in the break room, Janelle squeezed Amara's hand. You should file a complaint. Amara shook her head. Against who? The man who pays half this city's salaries. But you can't just, I can. Her voice cracked. Because I don't have a choice. My mom's treatment's rent. She rubbed her eyes. If I walk out, we starve. Silence hung heavy, thicker than the stale air around them. Janelle whispered, "It's not fair." "No," Amara said softly. "It's not." She tied her apron tighter and stood. The weight of silence was suffocating, but breaking it seemed impossible. Not yet. Richard slept soundly that night, certain his empire was untouchable, but far away. A man with the power to dismantle it was already calculating the cost of arrogance, and Amara, though she didn't know it yet, carried within her the beginning of his undoing. The morning sun glared off the mirrored windows of Halden Industries' skyscraper. Reporters clustered at the base, microphones raised like weapons, cameras flashing in quick bursts. Richard Halden loved it. He stepped out of his black town car, flanked by two assistants, his designer suit pressed to perfection. He lifted his chin, smiling faintly as the questions began. "Mr. Halden, is it true your merger with Chen Global will make Halden Industries the largest logistics firm in North America? Mr. Halden, do you think regulators will approve a deal this size?" Richard paused dramatically, then spoke into the chorus of mics. "When you're building the future, obstacles are nothing more than details. This deal isn't just happening, it's inevitable." Applause broke out among the reporters, though some exchanged skeptical glances. Inside the marble lobby, Carter trotted beside him, juggling folders. "Your interview with CNBC is at noon, board meeting at 1, dinner with Chen tonight." Richard barely listened. "Get the talking points about vision ready. Investors eat that word like candy." Carter hesitated. "Richard, about last night." Richard's eyes flicked sideways. "What about it?" The investor, Chen, he didn't look pleased with Richard, waved him off. "He'll sign. They all sign. Because I win. Carter, I always win." The elevator doors closed with a metallic snap, cutting the conversation short. On the 47th floor, the boardroom gleamed with glass walls and city views. Executives sat stiffly around the table as Richard strode in like a king. "Gentlemen, ladies," he spread his hands wide. "We are days away from history." Applause echoed, rehearsed and hollow. One executive cleared his throat. "Our analysts say Chen Global may demand higher equity than we expected." Richard smirked. "Then I'll remind him who controls the market. Negotiations are a game of nerves, and mine are steel." A murmur of agreement followed, though unease lingered. Later that afternoon, in the green room of CNBC Studios, Richard adjusted his cufflinks as the producer counted down. The anchor smiled, practiced, and sharp. "Mr. Halden, viewers are calling this merger one of the most ambitious in corporate history. What makes you so confident?" Richard leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Because I see further than anyone else. My competitors fight over scraps. I'm building empires. When Chen Global signs, it will be the final proof Halden Industries is untouchable." Untouchable. The word rolled off his tongue like scripture. Viewers at home nodded, admiring, envious, resentful. But somewhere in the city, Amara heard the same word echoing on the TV in the restaurant break room. Her stomach twisted. Untouchable. That was what he believed. Boffed back in his office, Carter lingered nervously. "Richard, are you sure about your approach with Chen?" Richard poured himself a drink. "Carter, let me teach you something. Business is war. And in war, there are generals, and there are foot soldiers. Chen will sign because he has no choice. But if he doesn't," Richard cut him off with a laugh, "if he doesn't, then he's a fool, and fools get left behind." He raised his glass toward the skyline, his reflection tall and gleaming against the city's towers. "I own this world." What Richard didn't know was that, across town, Mr. Chen was replaying every second of last night's dinner in his mind. The word stupid, the silence that followed, the way Amara had bowed her head. A single crack had appeared in Richard Halden's empire, and Chen had no intention of forgetting it. The bus ride home rattled through the Bronx, neon lights flickering against cracked windows. Amara sat pressed against the seat, her journal open on her lap. The words spilled out, jagged, shaky, like they'd been trapped all night. He called me stupid, in front of everyone, and I stayed silent. Why? Why do I always stay silent? The pen dug so deep it nearly tore the page. She slammed it shut before the tears could fall. At the next stop, she climbed off. dragging her tired feet up the stairs of the small apartment she shared with her mother. Inside, the faint hum of an oxygen machine greeted her. Her mother, Evelyn, lay propped against pillows, her smile weak but steady. "Baby," Evelyn whispered, her voice thin but warm. "Long night." Amara forced a smile. "Yeah, just work." Evelyn's sharp eyes caught the crack in her daughter's expression. Something happened. Amara hesitated, then sank into the chair beside the bed. "A man, a customer. He called me stupid." Her mother's brows furrowed. "Why?" "Because I set a glass down wrong." "Because he could," Amara's voice cracked. "And I just stood there, like I deserved it." Evelyn reached for her hand, frail fingers squeezing with surprising strength. "Listen to me. You are not stupid. You are not what that man called you. Do you hear me?" Amara blinked back tears. "But I didn't fight back. I stayed quiet." "Sometimes, silence isn't weakness," Evelyn said softly. "Sometimes, it's survival. You needed that job. That doesn't make you less." Amara swallowed, guilt twisting in her chest. "I hate that he got away with it." "He didn't." Evelyn's eyes gleamed. "Because you're still here, and men like him, they always fall, sooner or later." The next day at work, Janelle leaned over as they tied their aprons. "You look different," she whispered. "Different how?" "Like you're done crying. Like you're ready to fight." Amara smirked faintly. "Maybe I am." She carried her tray through the dining room with steadier hands. Every clink of glass reminded her of the insult, but now it fueled something new. Resolve. When a customer snapped their fingers impatiently, Amara straightened, squared her shoulders, and delivered their order without flinching. Janelle caught her eye from across the room and nodded that night. Amara opened her journal. Again, this time, her words were sharper, controlled. "He thinks he owns the world. He thinks no one can touch him. But people like him always forget someone's always watching." She closed the notebook, tucked it under her pillow, and for the first time since that humiliating night, she slept without tears. Meanwhile, in his glass tower, Richard Halden was reviewing projections, smiling at the billions dangling within his reach. And in a penthouse across town, Mr. Chen was staring out over the city, his decision quietly forming like a storm on the horizon. The threads were tightening, though none of them yet saw the knot about to pull tight. The boardroom of Halden Industries stretched like a glass cage above the city, its panoramic windows displaying Manhattan in glittering arrogance. Polished mahogany gleamed under the lights, bottles of imported water lined neatly across the table. Richard Halden swept in, trailed by Carter and two attorneys. His confidence was palpable, his stride carrying the weight of a man who believed. The world bent to him. On the opposite end sat Mr. Chen. Composed, his assistant seated neatly at his side. His gaze was steady, but unreadable. Richard clapped his hands once. "Gentlemen, let's make history." The attorneys slid folders across the table. Numbers, contracts, projections, all. The evidence of a $3.5 billion empire waiting to expand. Richard leaned back, steepling his fingers. "As you can see, the terms are favorable for both sides. Naturally, Halden Industries will maintain majority control. We built this market. You'll simply be joining the winning team." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Majority control. Interesting." Richard smirked. "Of course, my investors expect it. I can't hand over the reins, but you'll profit handsomely. It's a win-win." Carter shifted in his seat, uneasy. Chen's assistant whispered something in Mandarin. Chen nodded slowly, then looked Richard in the eye. "Tell me something, Mr. Halden. How do you treat your people?" Richard laughed, the sound echoing off the glass walls. "My people, I lead them. I demand excellence. And if they can't handle that, they're weak, disposable." Silence stretched. Chen tapped a finger against the table. "I see." The negotiations continued. Numbers volleyed back and forth like chess pieces, but an undercurrent of tension pulsed beneath every exchange. During the lunch break, Carter cornered Richard in the hallway. "You shouldn't have said that." "Said what?" "That people are disposable, Chen. He's testing you." Richard scoffed. "Testing me? He's lucky to be here. Do you know how many companies would crawl through glass to sit at this table?" Carter lowered his voice. "You don't understand. He doesn't care about the money alone. He's watching you. The way you act. The way you lead." Richard straightened, his tie with a smug grin. "Then he's seeing exactly what makes me great. Strength." When they reconvened, Chen leaned forward, his voice calm but pointed. "You remind me of someone," he said softly. "Oh," Richard arched a brow. "Yes, a man I met in London, Years ago, he built an empire, too bought to believe money made him untouchable. He treated everyone beneath him as trash. Eventually, his empire collapsed because no one wanted to stand by him when it mattered. Richard chuckled. A tragic story, but I assure you, Mr. Chen, I am no fool. My empire isn't built on friendship, it's built on power. Chen's expression did not change, but his silence spoke louder than any rebuttal. The clash was not of contracts, but of values. One man saw the world as numbers and dominance. The other measured it in dignity, and though the meeting ended with handshakes and polite smiles, beneath the surface, the war had already been decided. That night, Richard boasted to the press, declaring negotiations nearly complete and victory inevitable. But in Chen's suite, over tea with his assistant, his words were different. Arrogance, he said quietly. That's all I saw today. A man blind to the cost of his own pride. May tilted her head. Will you continue? Chen sipped his tea slowly. For now, sometimes the most effective way to expose a tyrant is to let him speak long enough to hang himself. The hum of the restaurant at midnight was softer, stripped of its glamour. The last guests had gone, and the staff lingered, scrubbing tables, clattering dishes into bins, trading exhausted sighs. But tonight, their voices carried something else. Whispers. Did you hear how he talked to Amara? One busboy muttered, shaking his head. Yeah. Called her stupid, right in front of everyone. Another said, man thinks he's king of the world. Janelle slammed a tray into the sink. And the worst part, everyone just let it happen. Amara sat quietly, tying her apron into a knot, her face unreadable. One of the new hires, Malik, hesitated, phone in hand. Look, I know this is risky, but people need to know. Stuff like this happens all the time. If we stay quiet, it keeps happening. He pressed record, speaking into the camera. My name's Malik. I work at the Skyline rooftop. Last week, billionaire Richard Halden humiliated one of our waitresses for no reason. Called her stupid in front of everyone. She didn't deserve it. None of us do. Someone has to speak up. He posted it on a small online forum dedicated to service workers. It didn't go viral yet, but the post gathered comments. Stories poured in, tales of cruelty, arrogance, humiliation from other powerful men who thought no one was watching. The whispers had begun. Meanwhile, Mr. Chen's assistant, May, entered the restaurant discreetly the next afternoon. She ordered a coffee, observing quietly before pulling Janelle aside. You were working the night Mr. Halden dined here, weren't you? Janelle stiffened. Who's asking? May smiled faintly. I'm with Chen Global. He wanted me to confirm something. Janelle's eyes widened. He saw it. Yes, May said gently. But he wants to hear the truth. From you. Janelle hesitated, glancing toward the manager's office. We could get fired for talking. You won't, May assured her. Not if it means stopping something bigger. Finally, Janelle exhaled. He called her stupid, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. She didn't do anything wrong. He just wanted to put her down. Another waiter nearby overheard and joined in. She's not the first. I've seen him here before. Always rude, always cruel. Voices trickled in, one after another. Quiet at first, then louder, like a dam cracking. May listened, recording their statements with permission. Some broke down in tears, recalling how powerless they'd felt. Others clenched their fists, reliving the shame. By the time she left, she carried more than confirmation. She carried testimony. Back at the penthouse, she placed her phone on the table in front of Chen. He pressed play. One by one, the voices filled the room. A chorus of pain, a record of arrogance. When the last clip ended, silence stretched between them. Chen leaned back slowly, eyes narrowing. So, it's true. All of it. May nodded. And it's not just about one waitress. It's a pattern, a culture he carries everywhere he goes. Chen set his teacup down carefully. Men like him believe money erases consequence. They're wrong. At that same hour, in his glass tower, Richard celebrated. He laughed with his board, cigars burning, champagne flowing. We're days away from the finish line. Gentlemen, he roared. Chen will fold. He always does. They all do. His executives clapped dutifully, though unease flickered in their eyes, because even in the echo of laughter, something felt fragile, something felt off. And outside that tower, whispers were turning into voices, voices that Richard Halden could no longer afford to ignore. The negotiation suite on the 52nd floor was silent except for the faint ticking of a clock. Contracts lay scattered across the long table, but no one reached for a pen. Boff Richard leaned back in his chair, exuding confidence. His cufflinks glinted under the recessed lights, his smile sharp. "So, Mr. Chen," he drawled, "are we ready to finalize this thing? I've already had my people draft the press release. Wall Street is salivating." Chen studied him quietly, hands folded, expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "There's one thing we need to discuss before I sign." Richard chuckled. "Of course, numbers, equity split. You'll find I'm generous within reason." Chen shook his head. "Not numbers, character." The room stilled. Richard arched a brow. "Character. This is business, Chen. Deals are made with numbers, not morality." "Morality matters," Chen said evenly, "especially when billions are at stake. Tell me, do you remember the waitress?" For the first time, Richard's smile faltered. "What waitress?" "The young woman you humiliated at dinner. You called her stupid." Richard let out a laugh, dismissive and sharp. "Is that what this is about? She made a mistake. I corrected her. End of story." Chen's eyes narrowed. "End of story. Or beginning of a pattern." Richard leaned forward, voice dropping to a growl. "Listen, Chen, I don't answer to waitresses, or to you. People like her, they're nothing, replaceable. If she couldn't handle a little pressure, she doesn't belong in the world I built." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Carter shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight, his pen tapping nervously against the table. Chen spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "That is exactly the problem, Mr. Halden. You see people as nothing. You confuse cruelty with strength, arrogance with leadership." Richard scoffed. "Spare me the lecture. You're here because you want money, and I'm the man who can multiply it. You'll sign, Chen, because you don't have a choice." Chen's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I always have a choice." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "You think you're better than me? You think some waitress means anything in this room? She doesn't. People like her. People beneath me. They're irrelevant." His voice grew louder, venom spilling into every syllable. "I built this empire. I control this city. If she cried, if she broke, it means she was weak. And the world doesn't protect the weak." The words echoed through the room, bouncing off the glass walls. His executives looked away, ashamed. Carter closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing for impact. Chen rose slowly from his seat. His calm presence contrasted Richard's fury like ice against fire. "You are wrong," Chen said softly, but with an edge that cut deeper than any shout. "The world does protect the weak when enough people refuse to stay silent. You humiliated a woman who did nothing but her job. And in doing so, you revealed who you truly are." Richard sneered. "I revealed strength." "No," Chen said, buttoning his suit jacket. "You revealed rot." He gathered his papers, his assistants following his lead. "Where are you going?" Richard demanded. Chen turned, his gaze steady, final. "Away from this table, away from your deal, away from men who think dignity can be traded for dollars. You'll regret this," Richard shouted, his face red, veins bulging. "You walk away now. You lose billions, billions." Chen paused at the door. "Better to lose billions than to sell my name to a man who thinks others are beneath him." And then he was gone. The door closed with a soft click, but it thundered in Richard's chest like judgment itself. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Carter cleared his throat. "Richard, maybe we should reconsider our approach." "Shut up," Richard snapped, slamming his fist onto the table. Papers scattered, glasses rattled. "He'll be back. They always come back. No one says no to me." But the tremor in his voice betrayed something else. Fear. Because deep down, Richard knew this time was different. This time, his arrogance hadn't won him the room, it had emptied it. The news broke before sunrise. Breaking: Halden global deal collapses amid CEO's controversial behavior. Screens across Wall Street lit up with the headline. By mid-morning, stock tickers bled red, numbers plunging as investors scrambled to sell. Richard stormed into his office, phone pressed hard to his ear. "Find out who leaked this. I want names. I want heads on a platter." On the other end, his PR chief stammered, "Sir, it's everywhere already. Social media, international outlets. There's even a video clip." Richard froze. "Video clip? Yes, someone at the restaurant filmed the incident with the waitress. It's gone viral. Millions of views. Hashtags trending worldwide. Hashtag respect workers." Hashtag Halden exposed. Richard's grip tightened on the phone. This is nonsense. A waitress crying. That's what's bringing me down. The PR chief hesitated. Not just that, sir. People are connecting it to a pattern. Other former employees are coming forward. Stories of racism, bullying, cover-ups. It's snowballing. Richard slammed the phone down. Liars. Jealous nobodies. By noon, the crisis was no longer containable. To his board convened an emergency meeting. Faces appeared on the giant screen in the conference room, each one tight with frustration. Richard, one director, began sharply. This is catastrophic. Our market cap has dropped $3.5 billion in a single day. It's a glitch, Richard insisted, waving them off. Investors scare easily. Give it a week. No, Richard, another board member cut in. This isn't just numbers, it's trust, and you've destroyed it. Richard pounded the table. I am this company. You think you can replace me. Without me, Halden Global is nothing. A chilling silence followed. Then the chairman spoke. If this continues, there will be no Halden Global. The shareholders want action. They want accountability. They want blood. Another muttered. Richard's chest tightened. You're turning on me. After everything I built. The chairman's voice was grim. You built an empire, Richard, but you forgot something essential. Empires fall when their leaders believe they're untouchable. That evening, as the sun sank behind the skyline, Richard sat alone in his office. The city stretched beneath him, indifferent to his fury. Phones rang unanswered. Emails piled up. His empire, once so solid, was crumbling like sand between his fingers. The door creaked open. Carter stepped in, looking weary. Richard, he said softly, it's over. Chen signed with another firm. The board is preparing a vote to remove you. Richard's head snapped up. Remove me. They wouldn't dare. Carter's eyes were sad. They already have the votes. Richard shot to his feet. You betray. Me too. I warned you, Carter said quietly. I told you your words had consequences. Richard's laugh was bitter. Consequences? This is betrayal. No, Richard, Carter corrected, his voice steady. This is justice. Later that night, the networks replayed the viral video again and again. Richard's sneer, his voice, dripping contempt as he called Aisha stupid. The world watched, and the world judged. Commentators dissected every second. Activists demanded accountability. Former employees lined up to tell their stories. And Aisha, her face pale but resolute, finally agreed to an interview. She sat across from a reporter, hands folded tightly in her lap. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as she spoke. Was just doing my job, she said. But to him, I wasn't a person. I was disposable. That's how he treated me. That's how he treated everyone he thought was beneath him. The camera zoomed in on her, eyes clear, determined. I want people to know, dignity matters. No one has the right to strip that away, not even a billionaire. The clip spread like wildfire. And with every share, every comment, Richard's empire sank deeper into ruin. In his penthouse, Richard stared at the TV, whiskey glass trembling in his hand. They're nobodies, he muttered to himself. Nobodies don't get to win. But even he could hear the hollowness in his words. Because for the first time in his life, Richard Halden wasn't untouchable. He was exposed and falling. The boardroom was silent, heavy with tension. Richard sat at the head of the long mahogany table, trying to project authority, though sweat dampened his collar. One by one, the directors fixed their eyes on him, not with loyalty, but with calculation. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Halden, the shareholders demand accountability. We are here to vote on your removal as CEO of Halden Global. Richard scoffed. You think you can run this company without me? I am Halden Global. No, the chairman replied sharply. You were. Now, you are a liability. A murmur spread across the room. Then the votes were cast. 7 in favor of removal. The secretary read aloud. 2 against. Motion passed. The gavel struck the table. Richard blinked, stunned. His empire, his identity slipped away in a single sentence. You can't do this, he shouted. This is my company. But the board members were already gathering their papers. Their faces unreadable. Carter lingered last, giving Richard a long, steady look. You had everything, Richard. But you threw it away the moment you thought people didn't matter. News broke within minutes. Richard Halden removed as CEO in stunning boardroom coup. Screens across the globe flashed the headline. Stocks tumbled further. but the public cheered. Justice felt tangible, even if only symbolic. On social media, hashtags surged. Hashtag Aisha's voix. Hashtag respect workers. Hashtag Halden downfall. The waitress Richard had mocked became the symbol of resistance, proof that arrogance had limits, that power could crumble. Meanwhile, Aisha sat in her modest apartment, phone buzzing with endless messages. Girl, you're everywhere. Her friend Tasha exclaimed over the call. They're calling you the face of justice. Aisha shook her head, overwhelmed. I didn't want fame. I just wanted respect. Tasha's voice softened. And you got it. More than you know. There was a knock at the door. Aisha hesitated. Before opening it, on her doorstep stood a group of journalists. Cameras ready. Ms. Johnson, how does it feel to know your story took down one of the most powerful CEOs in the country? Aisha swallowed, steadying herself. For once, the fear didn't choke her. I didn't take him down, she said firmly. His own arrogance did. All I did was refuse to stay silent. The words struck like lightning. The cameras clicked furiously. Her voice carried across airwaves, her truth unshakable. In contrast, Richard stumbled through the lobby of his own headquarters later that evening. For years, employees had bowed their heads when he passed. Now, they didn't even look up. He barked at the security guards. Get me my car, now. But the guards exchanged glances, unmoved. You're no longer authorized here, sir, one finally said. Richard's face turned crimson. Do you know who I am? The guard's tone was calm, almost pitying. Everyone does. That's the problem. The revolving doors opened. For the first time in decades, Richard Halden stepped out into the city not as a titan, but as a man disgraced. That night, his name trended not as a symbol of power, but of downfall. Commentators called it the $3.5 billion lesson. Newspapers plastered Aisha's face beside his. The contrast, striking humility versus arrogance, dignity versus cruelty. Carter appeared on an evening program. When asked about Richard, his words were measured. Justice isn't always served in courts or prisons. Sometimes it's served when the world finally sees the truth. Back in her apartment, Aisha sat by the window, gazing at the city lights. Her phone buzzed again. Another request for an interview, another invitation to speak at a conference on workers' rights. She sighed. I'm just a waitress. But deep down, she knew she wasn't just anything anymore. She had become a voice, and voices carried. Richard, alone in his penthouse, hurled a glass against the wall. Shards scattered across the floor. His reflection in the window stared back at him, aged, defeated, powerless. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, all this, over a waitress. But even he knew the truth. It wasn't about a waitress, it was about respect, about humanity, about a man who thought he was untouchable until he wasn't. For Aisha, life was far from perfect. The scars of humiliation, the struggle of everyday survival, they didn't vanish overnight, but for the first time, she walked into the restaurant with her head high. Colleagues greeted her not with pity, but with admiration. Morning, Aisha once smiled. She smiled back, strength radiating in her quiet dignity. And when a customer tried to snap his fingers rudely, she simply met his eyes, unflinching. Respect, she said softly, goes both ways. The man faltered, mumbled an apology, and lowered his gaze. It was a small victory, but to Aisha, it meant everything. The grand ballroom glimmered with chandeliers, the air heavy with perfume and champagne. It was the annual Business Honors Gala, where titans of industry gathered to congratulate themselves. This year, however, the air carried a sharper edge, anticipation of Richard Halden's absence. But he came anyway, dressed in a suit that once commanded respect. Richard entered the room, chin high, though whispers chased him from every corner. That's him, lost billions overnight. Called a waitress stupid. The murmurs followed him like shadows. He forced a smile, gripping a glass too tightly. They still know my name, he muttered under his breath. But knowing wasn't the same as honoring. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Aisha sat nervously in a sleek black car, hands clasped tight. Relax, Tasha whispered beside her. You belong here. I'm a waitress, Aisha protested softly. No, Tasha corrected. You're the woman who stood up. That's why they want you tonight. The car pulled up to the same gala Richard had entered moments before. Photographers swarmed the carpet, flashes exploding as soon as Aisha stepped out. Miss Johnson, over here. Aisha, can we get a smile? Her knees trembled, but she lifted her chin and walked forward. Her modest gown shimmering under the lights, She didn't need riches, she had presence. Inside, the announcer's voice boomed. Tonight, we honor not only business success, but integrity, courage, and the voices that change the world. Please welcome Ms. Aisha Johnson. The applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, clapping, some with tears in their eyes. Richard froze mid-sip, color draining from his face. No, he whispered. He turned, and there she was walking toward the stage. The same woman he had once called stupid in front of a crowded restaurant. Now, the world called her inspiring. Aisha stood behind the podium, breath steady. Months ago, she began, voice trembling only slightly. I was serving tables, doing my best to make ends meet. A man with power and wealth humiliated me, called me names, treated me like I was nothing. The crowd quieted, listening with rapt attention. But here's the truth. No one is nothing. Everyone deserves respect. And when we forget that, when power blinds us, we lose more than money. We lose our humanity. Her words cut through the room, heavy and electric. Richard gripped the edge of his table, knuckles white. She was supposed to be invisible. Instead, she was the center of everything. The cameras zoomed in on Richard's face, broadcasting his scowl to millions watching the live stream. Social media exploded instantly. Look at his face. Hashtag poetic justice. She's glowing. He's rotting. This is history. Aisha finished her speech, her voice stronger now. I don't stand here as a symbol of revenge. I stand here as proof that dignity can't be bought, and respect can't be demanded. It must be given. The room erupted in applause, cheers shaking the walls. Richard couldn't take it anymore. He stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the marble floor. This is a circus, he shouted. You're all clapping for a waitress. She has no business being here. But his voice cracked. Desperate, pathetic. The applause didn't stop. It grew louder, drowning him out. Security moved closer. Ready. For the first time in his life, Richard Holden wasn't feared. He was pitied. He stormed toward the exit. But flashes followed him, reporters capturing every grimace, every twitch of rage. Aisha Johnson gets a standing ovation, while disgraced ex-CEO storms out. Headlines would read within minutes, the final humiliation. Later, as Aisha left the gala, a journalist caught up with her. Ms. Johnson, do you feel you've gotten justice? She paused, considering the weight of the word. Justice, double quotes. No, she said finally. This isn't justice. Justice is bigger than me. But tonight is a reminder that even the smallest voice can be heard. The journalist lowered the mic slowly, struck by the quiet power in her words. Meanwhile, Richard sat alone in the back of a taxi, tie loosened, sweat dripping down his temples. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Rough night, huh? Richard glared. Just drive. But the driver smirked. You know, my wife was watching that Waitress on TV tonight. Said she gave the best speech she'd ever heard. Richard shut his eyes, sinking lower in his seat, as if the whole world conspired to remind him of his fall. In the weeks that followed, Aisha became more than a story. She was invited to speak at universities, workers' unions, even international conferences. She wasn't rich, but she was respected. She wasn't famous, but she was unforgettable. And every time she spoke, she ended with the same words: respect goes both ways. Richard, stripped of his empire, vanished into obscurity. No one returned his calls. No one cared where he dined. The man who once commanded billions became a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. Don't be a Holden. One quiet evening, Aisha walked home after a speaking event. The city lights sparkled, the air cool and still. She thought of the restaurant, of the broken glass that had once seemed like the end of her world. Now, it was the beginning. She smiled softly to herself, not because she had won, but because she had endured, because the world had finally listened. And in that truth, there was justice, poetic, undeniable, eternal.